you definitely can do that. So I'm really, really excited to announce our keynote. How this is going to go is y'all can continue eating. We're going to hear from Ms. Chanel Haley, and then we're going to have a really brief Q&A at the end. So let me give you a little introduction. Chanel Haley is the trans inclusion organizer for Georgia Equality. In 2008, she used her skills as a political organizer to get the first out African-American lesbian elected to a General Assembly. Since 2010, she has been the senior legislative aide to Simone Bell, who was the first out African-American lesbian. In 2014, she was appointed to the City of Atlanta Human Relations Commission, and in 2016, she became the chairperson. Today, Chanel will be following our theme of mind, body, and heart by sharing her life experiences with us. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Chanel Haley.
Thank you for having me here today. I'm completely honored to be speaking here, to be at UGA, my first time here at UGA in Athens. So, you know, the thing being mind, body, and heart, then it just only makes sense when we talk about my life experiences and transitioning and to what brought me here today, where I'm in a place where you would ask me to come and speak in front of you. So we think about that, then we go back to kind of the beginning. You know, I actually am a product of a teenage parents. Okay, who was 14 when she had me. My father was 17. He was involved with crime. You know, his side of the family was really to the grips. He was originally from San Diego, California. That's where I was born. And so the outlook on my life certainly would not have thought that I would be on stage talking about my life or working in the General House, the Georgia General House Assembly. But I've had some influences within my life that has brought me here. And so going back to that, one of the influences is what's my mother? My mother actually worked on Marina O'Connor's campaign in San Diego. She was the first female mayor of the city of San Diego. And the city has held with me in my entire life. You know, we was not rich people. They're like, rich for a nice neighborhood. And there were certain little tidbits that I have looked at and kept with me in growing. So I also, my primary schooling was a Christian academy. And with that alone, was a little different than probably everybody else. It wasn't that bad, you know, I had to wear a uniform back in the 80s. But it still meant that I was mandatory taught certain values within the church that maybe I don't start to today. I don't know how everybody's probably young. So you don't remember what was called back then called Hooked on Phonics. Okay, you did right. That was part of our curriculum that we had to do. So I had, you know, regular curriculum, little Hooked on Phonics, and then of course it was time set aside to learn the Bible, which was a little weird, you know. And then, you know, my mother was so strict on me that she even gave a paddle to the head mistress to discipline me, and that was used a couple of times, you know. You know, I'm 10 years older than my sister, so I was pretty outspoken to what I wanted to do, and sometimes my mother was really strict until she got married when she moved here with my mom's sister. But, and yeah, so all those influences from my early childhood, you know, has helped to make me think about the other choices that I made in my life and how I have used those choices to transition to the next step. So even then, in a Christian academy, private school, I knew that I was different than everybody else. It was very clear. It was very clear when the headmistress caught me with a boy in the, you know, it was very clear. Of course, in private school, they don't report that to the parents because the parents are paying for the school. Same as boarding school, they don't do that either. A lot of people don't know that. There's a lot that goes on in boarding schools and in private schools that they don't report because they know that the money is going to access to the schools from the parents, and they feel like, you know, they paid and they trust you to do what's right, and if something is reported that they don't agree with, that they will pull the will shout out. So a lot of things they keep on a hush hush. But with that, and the headmaster's children also went to the school, I knew that I was completely different. I was not like the other little boys there. So, but kept it in, because remember I had, my father, I said, was a member of the front, the gang Crips, his entire side of his family was. And so the idea of what I would grow up to be was set in stone. I would be very attractive, like my father was. I'd be what's quote unquote a lady killer and a heartbreaker. These were things that would always say to me when his friends saw me. You're gonna be a heartbreaker when you grow up. Yeah, just a different gender, but okay. Also, it was that, I probably would be running the show like he was. When I grew up, I'll be doing that. But my mother had a different outlook on that. My mother had a different outlook on that. We moved to a different side of the neighborhood, so I would not have to see that all the time. And again, another decision that was made on my behalf that I take with me throughout my life. And I was thinking about that, about where I could have been, what I could have been doing. But reality, they probably accept me anyway, because who I am has been in depth, deep within me for a very long time, since the beginning. So, once we moved over, my mother and father were not together, he was in prison. It came to a point of where financial strains happened. My grandmother had already moved back to her hometown in North Carolina and then settled here in Atlanta, okay? And we need Granny. Granny is our rock. So let's follow Granny. And we're like, no, follow me. I'll run away from you. but eventually we came here to Atlanta. And so when coming here to Atlanta, now I am a teenager and I really am into who I am. Look, my hair is relaxed, I'm still a teenage boy. In school, people used to always call me Prince because of the androgyny that I had, which I thought was really weird because I had a really nice mustache. I was like, okay, whatever, that's from behind maybe, but not in the front. So, I had relaxed hairs like here, lots of body. So much better back then than it is now. But yeah. And so a lot of people just assumed it was fine. I graduated from Northland High School. I wore that from North High School. It was my home school though. I was lucky enough to have in my freshman and sophomore year, Jasmine Guy. You know who Jasmine Guy is? She is the mother of, Jasmine Guy was on a TV show called A Different World. So her mother was her home teacher. And she gave some good advice. She gave two advices, one about race, because her children are biracial. Jasmine Guy and her brother are biracial. She said, I tell my kids, when they do these standardized tests, put whatever race you feel is important that you identify with. Don't be subject to the boxes that they're putting you in. And so that transcends to me in my sexuality and my gender identity also, is that don't ascribe to just this one box that people automatically put you in. Even today, working at Georgia Equality and working and being entitled as Transgender Inclusion Organizer, that I put into a box, but really this box that I'm into is the most intersectional department that Georgia Equality has. There are transgender people who are particularly positive, who are black, who are white, who are Asian, who are Muslim, who are Christian, who are everything you think of, they fit into every other single box. And so I stand before you as a minority, in a minority, in a minority, in a minority, in a minority. And so, then what do I do? Who do I choose? It's kind of like that debate that happened in 2008 between Hillary and Obama. If you're a black woman, what do you do? Do you choose the first female president or the first African American president? Either way, you're in both boxes. And what decision do you make? And that's kind of been my life struggle my whole life, is which way do I sway? And if you sway the opposite way that a person thinks that you should do, then you're really judged. You're judged heavily, you're judged. You're a sellout if I don't do something that is only caters to the black community. If I do something that doesn't only cater to the trans community, then you don't care about trans rights. If I do something that caters to are social economic challenge, then you don't care about poor people. You know, it's constantly being judged over and over again. And I used to tell this to Simone after she left office, but like, you know, I kind of feel like I'm now the elected official because I'm constantly being judged over and over again about decisions that I make. And I wasn't elected to anything. I'm doing a job that I get paid to do, you know, that I was elected to do. But there's people who's constantly watching me and saying where I'm at. I'm here today at UGA. There's people who don't like UGA, who's Georgia State fans. So why are you here and not there? You know? Full disclosure, I was there 2 days ago. And I was in Emory yesterday. So I'm an equal opportunity. And let me tell you a secret for those of you who may not know this. So in my time at House of Representatives, what I did learn is that they favor certain graduates in the state of Georgia. Those graduates are Georgia State, West Georgia, and UGA. So I know right now I'm in the company of the future leaders for the state of Georgia. You already have a foot in the door. We know it out. Some of you don't want to get in politics or in office, but knowing that whatever job you make, you can make a difference by what you say and how you react and who you advocate for is important. So let me go back to still what along my life and how I get to here. So I talked about being in high school, and for me, even now, like I do work with the GSAs, and sometimes it's hard for me to relate because going to the performing arts school, they was brilliant. Like, I was born there, which is hardly ever happens, right? And even though I was Norm, I was African American in a rich white neighborhood, with school that, not proud of that. But that was my home school, that performing arts was so prevalent, they understood that people from LGBT community, that was kind of the bedrock of how they found themselves. This is before GSAs. So that was our GSA back then. And so the bullying didn't happen, and the little bit that did, I made sure that I had good friends with the pretty girls. And they protected me because, I was like, guys, I'm like, girl, talk to that boy, he's mean. Or that boy is nice, go all the way. So I thought it was a shooting. And the guys knew that, so it was kind of nicer to me than they would have been before that. I'm not advocating for that, I'm just saying, when you know that you are a target, you try to find a way to shield yourself from being a target. The same way in the workplace, I was asking about, who's here in front of us, and I think that you heard in my bio that I'm also a out equal workplace advocate, certified trainer for that. And if you're talking about going to ERGs and with HR and creating an LGBT network there, that your best ally is a cisgender white man, heterosexual white man, to go in there and say, hey, this group needs protections. Because that's what they listen to. Because that's the state we live in. Not just across the country, but especially here in the state of Georgia, in the South, that the cisgender heterosexual white man is the one that people want to listen to. And then secondly, is the cisgender white female. And so always having them as your allies to just say, hey, this is what you need to listen to. And then once the door is open, you can walk right through that door. No different than back through trying to do civil rights when, there was the cisgender white male or females that would sit there and make this case of why integration should take place. And so it's a building block, it's a coalition building. That's what we call it in nonprofit, coalition building. And there's nothing wrong with that. During this day when we have Black Lives Matter, I'm an executive member of a Black Lives Matter Atlanta. That's okay to know and take advice and help from someone who you may not fit into your box. Because it helps your movement move further, then that's the way she goes. So again, in high school, wasn't a great student at all. Especially 11th and 5th grade, that's when I started getting liked, and so cutting school was kind of popular. Heading out to the mall. But because now I'm entering into the real world, right? This is when people, it's okay to judge someone. I'm out of school, so I'm not a kid anymore. This is when they can judge you. This is when I went to a job and they said to my face, we don't hire your kind. Very popular comment here that said that. And then from that, going to EOC and them saying, nothing to do about that, because this is not part of the law. What they said is okay. So it's in that process that I had to understand, what is it that I can do to make me a person that people would hire and see as normal, quote unquote, and B, why don't they see me as normal and hireable when they caught me in, obviously the resume was fine, so they caught me in. And then how to move that forward? Like, what do we do for, it's not me, for my community, the trans community? And so that was back in the early 2000s. So as you read, already heard in my resume, we're talking about, me volunteering. So all I recommend when you're not working, volunteer. Keep your skill set up. You make connections. But you also learn. You learn who to talk to, how to talk, what to talk about. You get a really good focus on what the issues are, and kind of how to steer that ship the right direction to the results that you want. If you're doing volunteering with a good organization, then that's something you can develop. But that's what I kind of learned more about myself. So we're talking about mind, body, and heart, right? So I know as a trans woman, body is always an issue. Having gender dysphoria is an issue, body issues is an issue. I talked already about my hair, so it was very important that I got the hair right for today. It was very important that I got the right dress for today. It's very important to make that. It's always important for me to feel comfortable in front of people because of my my gender dysphoria issues, which is not uncommon than any other young girl or woman who has issues, against a love handle or breast size or how you fit into clothing. I never try to clothes one in the store. Never. Throw it back, throw it in the park, go home. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, I think you know where to return it because I just don't feel comfortable trying to close one in the store. And that's a personal thing for me now. So that's something that I'm still working on, and hopefully in the next 2 years, I'll have mastered and feel more comfortable about that. But when it comes to mind, so that was challenged. I'll say circuit 97 for me, 98 to 99. Where I was challenged in a restroom. So throughout the country right now, there's legislation going on about bathroom access for transgender individuals. And so I've witnessed that here. So you heard in there that I am now the chairperson for Atlanta's Human Relations Commission. Atlanta is the only city currently in this whole state of Georgia that has non-discrimination ordinance across the board for everybody, which includes implementation, gender identity, in public housing, private employment, and public accommodations. There's other cities and counties that have it for their employees, but the city of Atlanta has it for any patron. So anybody who's here now and visit Atlanta, whether you live there or not, you are protected under that city code. And so what the Human Relations Commission does is, we're the body, it's a 7-board body, we have 2 vacancies now, so it's like 5 of us. But it's a body that protects that ordinance. So if you feel discriminated against, and what you do is you file a complaint at City Hall, that complaint then comes to this board, the board, will decide 2 things. If it's discrimination, and then what the mayor should do about that. Okay, so with that being said, that's new. That wasn't available back in 98 or 99. When I went to a restaurant at Underground, Atlanta, and the police knocked the door, waited for me to come out. And mind you, this was a single stall too. It was a single stall that said, women on it, and there's a single stall that said men on it. But I was the women's one. So we're never talking about, where there was a bunch of women in the restaurant with me. It was just me. That's all there was. They all had one toilet. The police waited outside for me, and see your ID. Okay?
Here you go.
Okay, so you can't even, they tell me you can't use this restroom. This restroom is reserved for women, you're not a woman. Okay, the worker there, this was inside of a, well, I would say it was a fast food restaurant, inside at the room. And it was the cashier there that actually reported this and called police there. So, haven't been back there since though, because that was rude. But, at that time, I was like, what? I mean, I'm just using the restroom by myself. Who am I bothering? There's no one that's even allowed to be in here with me. So really, what's the problem? What is the problem here? Okay. But that was over 10 years ago. Okay. And then today, I'm sitting in front of you talking about this on the board that governs that. And so that's kind of the full circle of where I come from to where I am today. And I talk about this all the time in the presentations that I do with trans competency and being trans-friendly. Is that, why am I here today? I'm here because there are now more polarizing images of trans women that you see in your everyday life all the time. So, whether it's the Martin Cox, or it is Janet Mock, who outed herself, whether it was Chaz Bono, or even Caitlyn Jenner. And I respond to that with Caitlyn, because I know there's people that feel about it. But the point is that they're not just now entertainment in a club or ornaments on gay pride floats. The image has changed. We have an all-American athlete. We have a thespian, college-educated thespian. We have an award-winning author. These are women now, trans women, who are now in the forefront, who are not just viewed as entertainment. They're valued. They have raised the value for our entire community up. Think Chad Bono also, sorry, forget him. And so that's the reason why. And so let me address Caitlyn Jenner. As a person originally from California, but even then it was different than I am now here. So I always, when I think about the trans community, I still give Caitlyn credit because of what I just said. Because she is the white trans woman, then people took notice. She was the hero. Oh my gosh, this athlete did all this. And if you recall, so it's a 10-year gap between Caitlyn and Chaz. When Chaz came out and transitioned, it was not that well received. It was, oh, I don't really know, what does Cher think? Whatever Cher thinks, we'll go with that. But when Caitlyn transitioned, it was 100 million followers on Twitter in 30 seconds, right? It was instant. It was like, wow, oh, great, yay, Caitlyn, great. And then Caitlyn started talking. But again, so I want to say that here's the issue though with Caitlyn, is that take away her money, because any one of us right now can go out and win the lottery. Remember that $1 billion lottery happened? You can win that and be richer than Caitlyn. Which probably make you probably more famous than Caitlyn also. And those are things that I can compete with and be like her. What Caitlyn has that I don't have is that she lives in California. She's been guided, she's been shielded by the inequality and the discrimination that I have suffered here in the South and the state of Georgia. That's the ignorance of Caitlyn Jenner. That is what I argue about. Not because of her privilege of being white or rich or famous. Those things can come and go. But the shielding of being in a state that recognizes all of their residents and constituents is way different than here in the South, particularly in the state of Georgia. So I just want to take with that. So when you're talking about, and the comment comes up about Caitlyn, it's not because she's rich and white privilege. It's because she's shielded by what the California protection has versus the rest of the country. So anyway, my story, right? Back to the place, in the restroom, got escorted out by the police. So that was really embarrassing. And at that time, that's when I was like, what do I do? I mean, Georgia to fight that. I was a rich, so I could go and hire an attorney. At that time, attorneys wasn't doing it for free. Legal aid doesn't take on in many cases, especially when it comes to discrimination. So that was it. I walked away with shame. You know, I heard it was arrested anyway. I was dumb. I don't know why I was still issue. I did what I had to do. So to move forward. But that is when I decided, you know, when the question came posed to me, or thought came to me about volunteering with nonprofits, sure. Absolutely. Let me learn something here. Let me learn about protections that I need and how to use protections or class of people that need protections. And so that's what I started doing. And I was unemployed anyways. You know, so definitely do this. So with that, doing these volunteer services with different nonprofit organizations is how I ended up meeting some very prominent people in my life. And one of them led to me being part of what they was called Stonewall 40. It was the 40th anniversary of Stonewall, and they decided that they wanted the trans community to be in the forefront because arguably the catalyst of starting the riots was from a trans woman called Sylvia Rivera, who threw the first bomb that hit the officer, and so that started the riots in retaliation of the officers trying to beat up and pull the patrons of Stonewall nightclub in New York out. Did anyone here know that story about Stonewall? Okay, great. Yeah. That's important. A lot of people go to pride events, but they just party and know the history. So that's great. So because of that, then I actually became the spokesperson for the trans person to be the spokesperson, and I did that. So just doing, you know, radio reviews and stuff like that. And during that process, where I met Sylvia, who at that time worked for Women Legal as a community organizer. Of course, I didn't meet her first time, but I noticed that with this event around the trans community, she was in it because, you know, we say LGBTQI, but so many times the T is always dropped off or forgotten out. There's always been a great divide between the lesbian, gay, and bi community versus the trans community. That's just how history's been. And so that's why, you know, right now when we talk about trans, it's like really weird to see these organizations who we know in the past have said some nasty things or left us behind. They're all for it now because there's money in it. There's money in it now, so yeah, they're, oh, we love the trans community. Okay, sure you do, whatever, just cut my check. So I was really flattered by Simone. Black, strong woman, no offense, she's an Aggie Scott graduate. And, you know, really for the trans community, which is not something that we were used to. So when she said she's running for office, yeah, I'm free to learn and do whatever I can to make sure that you win, because I know that I would have had it there. Because they're not going to put me there yet. But if I have an ally there, then that's great too. And so did that, volunteered for her campaign. Like volunteer means free, so I didn't get paid for it. But I loved doing it, I really did. I became, she even joked about it, she said, you really should start a business of being a homemaker, because I was really good. At one point, on our second campaign, 70% of the phone banking made for a district of 53,000 people, I did personally. So I got really good at doing phone banking. But she ran for office, and then she won, and then her campaign manager was like, you know, you really should take Chanel to the Capitol. She is gung-ho, she's smart, she learned things really fast. She's computer literate, you know, this is the person today. And on that advice, she invited me to come up there, and I was totally shocked, like, what, really, you know what? Yeah, cool. And I'll tell you, full disclosure, so prior to starting there, we had a sit-down meeting, because it was a game plan. We assume that going in there, they're going to fight this, they might try to change some laws because they don't want to cheat either. Because only 3 years before that was the Vandy Beth case that took place. Do you know about Vandy Beth's case that took place? Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I'll tell you about that briefly. So Vandy Beth used to work at the conversation, and then you actually have people in the state of, at the Capitol, who literally are the basement, who actually are physical writers, editors of legislation that is presented to the General House, okay? Baby Beth had that job. And so she went to, her boss though would be the chief legal counsel, had to get that approved, went to him and said, hey, I want a transition. He was like, oh, no, that's not that. He was not okay with that. So he fired her, she sued, through legal, and won. He appealed, Betty Beth won. He appealed again, Betty Beth won. Okay, so she got her job back at Betty Beth. So that's the story of Betty Beth, a very, very short synopsis of that. And so, because that happened, is why the conversation that Simone had with me about that you're coming here, you know, this has already happened before. Devise a plan in case they want to retaliate against you being here. But there was no problems. There was no problems at all. I came in, I was fine. People there was really nice. It was very accepting. It was very yes ma'am, no ma'am, open doors for me. It was really, really weird. I was not what I expected to happen. But with that, I learned some things, and again, mind, body, and heart, right? So I was vulnerable there because I was older than all the other aides there. All the other aides there were, going to law school. I was in law school. So what I learned and what I actually realized, I didn't learn this, I realized this out loud, is that all my life, as an African American trans woman, I always had to work harder, think harder, and push harder than everybody else just to be noticed for being mediocre. Because when I walk into a room, no one expects me to know what I know or to be where I've been, even on a personal level. When I was working there, so in my, you come to my house, there's a lamp, and all my badges, I have put to the lamp. And so I meet a guy, whatever, and talk to him, whatever, and tell him what I do. People say, yeah. And then when he came to my house and saw the badges, his mouth literally dropped. That was mine. What trans person works at the Capitol? Sorry. I get too ready. But works at the Capitol. That is always what they say, or what their face was. And I was like, the first couple times, I was like, what? But after a while, I was just waiting for them to see that. And then, I want to see their face because, this is what I said I did. You didn't believe me. And so for some, that was, they backed off because they didn't want smarts. They didn't want accomplished. They wanted to pray because they were predators. So that's something that I learned with being there as the House of Representatives and working with some people, and even when I first got there, a gay man sit there and said to me, he challenged me, what do you know, who'd you go to, why do you have this job and not somebody else? That's always the question. Who are you? Why are we here? And so constantly I have to always fight that, even with Georgia Equality. So I got the phone call for Georgia Equality about 2 weeks before I started. I started January 1st, but we have a fundraiser around June 18th, every year. This year too, we're getting ready to it's part of the Union for Equality. And that's where they announced that I was hired. So after that was done, Lenny comes up to me and says, well, nice to meet you, Chanel. I had a lot of friends who applied for the job, so you must be really good. I was like, I guess. But what that said to me is, who are you? Why do you have this? And my Harvard graduate friends do not. That's every day I face with that. So that is part of, who I am, and always trying to fight and combat and trying to prove myself that I belong to be in the spaces that I'm part of. With Georgia Equality, I was invited to come to a summit for UN women. So it's extremely flattering that a trans woman is invited to be at UN women. But when I'm in that space, then I still have to fight and say why I should be in this space. So it's constant, always reaffirmation of why I belong and why you should have me here. So we'll transition a little bit from the house to like where I am now. So Georgia Quality, I'm a great boss. I'm allowed to do pretty much any programming that I want, issue things that I want. I don't need permission to come. I don't need permission to come and speak here or anything else I do. You ask, I show up, and that's great because there's some obligations that cut things off. But even still with that, I'm constantly questioning about what are you doing for us? What are you doing for us? And this is what I'm doing for you. I'm trying to change the narrative and the view of the trans woman experience, particularly I'm African American, so the Black trans woman experience. Because what most people think about them is that they're all hookers, or I should say they're all working in the sex industry, that they all do shows at a nightclub, they probably all do makeup hair, and they're just really fun people, like RuPaul. 10 years ago, if you asked every person in here, they were a trans person, they would say RuPaul, and that's all you would know. That's it, but throughout time, there's been other people. You wouldn't say Marsha B. Johnson, who was a historical trans figure within our community. You would say RuPaul, because she's the one that people see on television, she's the one with got hair. She was the one that was a cover girl model for, and I think Mac also. That's who you see and talk about. But there are so many others every day who work in corporate America, who have PhDs, who's ran for office. There actually is a trans woman, she's not of color, but we actually have had a trans woman who was on Riverdale City Council here in the state of Georgia. How many of you knew that? Yeah, Michelle won about 10 years ago. She won. And the controversy about her winning is why she did not win for a re-election, because they felt as if she tricked them. I don't know the reason why if I run for office I have to say, hi, I'm running for office and I'm trans. That should not be part of my platform or on my flyers that I get out, because then it sounds like I only run it because I'm trans and I want you to vote for me for that, or I only want those constituents. No, I'm running to represent an entire district, and therefore saying that I'm trans shouldn't matter. But that was the reason why she wasn't re-elected. But history has been made in Georgia where we have had a trans woman on city council or in city government. Kudos to that, because I don't think a lot of people know that. That was quite a long ago, so a lot of people who did know never talk about it or move forward from it, And then as you talk about, I'm the first African American trans woman hired by the House of Representatives. And that's, to me, because this is why I live life, not a big deal. But to the next one coming behind, to them, that it was possible. And this was not a secret, because let me tell you, they knew, because I didn't get paid for 3 weeks, because it was deciding whether or not who's going to get rid of me or not. I got the job for a job that's supposed to pay weekly. They went 3 weeks to pay me, because they were debating, I don't know what we should do here. But then they remembered and noticed that A, they lost the case with Betty Beth, who was represented by the law firm Level Legal, which Simone used to work for. So they put the connection together. Like, look, okay, just let her keep the job, and then we'll have her come back. That worked out finally. That worked out well. But there was still no problems every day with that. I didn't have any restroom issues, and so I'm fortunate in that way. And I try to talk about that a lot of times too with some colleagues of mine in Georgia Equality, because a lot of times when we're in social justice situations, it is the poor, underprivileged, trans men and women who don't have access to any money or health care or even housing that people know about. And so their experiences, what they say, is not unlike my own. It's just that I have now, within the past 6 years, been over to the other side of the tracks. And so I use that, though, to know that I came from where they were to talk about, and this side, the situations and the experiences from over there. And so sometimes people are like, well, you don't understand, you don't get it, you know, you're a different class. I'm a different class now, but I've been there, I've lived that life. I have been homeless. I have attempted suicide. I have been shot at. I have been sexually assaulted. I have every adversity, almost every adversity that you can think of when we talk about the trans community, I have experienced. There's only three that come to mind that I have not. I currently am not HIV positive, I'm not an immigrant, and I'm not a veteran. Those are only three. So if you think of some other ones, I probably fit those boxes in the category that you can think of. And so with that being said, you know, people, when we're talking to somebody, like, I get it. But I try to always say that of how to advocate for the community. And so this is one way, you know, speaking to, as I said before, you are a favorite in the eyes of Georgia General Assembly to run this state. You're a favorite. So I'm speaking to you because you are our future leaders of Georgia. And so for you to have an experience with someone that has lived those experiences and that can tell you directly of how our lives are affected and disadvantaged and what it is that you can do to help move it forward. And it's why I'm here. It's why I speak to any group. I need you to know. You know, it's like it's like women who reproductive systems is judged and voted on by a bunch of old white men. That's not okay. That's just not okay. So I think it's, you know, you should be there, somebody should be at the table, and then you show up and say so about that. And so that's what I'm doing. You know, I talked earlier about early beginnings and my family, mother life, and I'll tell you, so, you know, now we're talking about my heart. And it's not ill. You know, as being a trans woman, living in the South, even though my mother was from Detroit originally, and then moved to California, and like I said before, a routine mother, so you would think she'd be all good woman on your sides. But nope. She likes the South, she adopted everything that comes with the South, and we're not in the best relationship ever. We've actually done it speak currently now, it's been 3 years. And that's something that I have to deal with every day, as she do, but I'm not going to speak for her. So with that being said, it's important that you do build allies and friendships and a support system to be able to carry on. You know, I mentioned before, and I have no problem ever saying this, is that, you know, I've had suicide attempts twice. Once as a child, in the 6th grade, and then once as an adult. And with that, both times, it was because of a network of friends that I had that changed the outcome of that. Okay. The first time was just a letter that was written to prepare for. The second time as an adult, the attempt took place. And it was friends that noticed and knew about that rushed in and made sure that the attention was given to me medically to stop the outcome that I wished would have happened. So it's so important that when you are dealing with your inner feelings, that if they're not quite, I would say, quote unquote, what the society says is the norm, that you get help. That you reach out to somebody, you talk to somebody, and you say, look, you know, I'm feeling this way, even though no matter how hard it is, that you take the advice, that reach out, whether it's a hotline, it's a family member, it's a friend, sometimes it's a coworker, sometimes it's just writing it down. And write it down, and you reading it. And if you're reading it, then the tears are all down, and it kind of puts it more in perspective for you. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes it's just truly all you need. And then sometimes there's more you need, whether it is professional help or medication, or to be able to speak in front of a group of people to write your project. Depends on your level, your comfort level, and how much support you may need. But having that support is extremely important in anything that we do. You know, something that I think so many of us realize is that I'm looking at this room right now, and I'll say about half of you, and I'm saying this on looking at you, not looking about you, but half of you in this room are minorities. Because a lot of times we only think about Black people as a minority group, or a Hispanic as a minority group, but there's other races that are minority groups. Women, you're in a minority group. Of course, if you're probably LGBT, you're a minority group. And when you're in minority groups and you are discriminated against, and people are always pushing against you, the other day when I was talking on a panel, it was about women's workplace, women's empowerment, and one issue that came up was workplace inequality. And I brought up that it was so, to me, just the rage, disheartening, the fact that in this country, white cisgendered men thought it was more important and made more sense to allow a Black man, who was, what, 3/4 of a real man, to vote before their wife, their cisgendered Black woman. And so that discrimination in our country in relation to gender is so embedded in us. And it's not going to change overnight. 100 years later, it's still here. So that was something. And going to all the other small groups of minorities, there's that same discrimination that takes place. And then, of course, some of us are members of many different minority groups, right? So minority within minority within minority within minority. And so again, I said before about picking and choosing, it brings this to one way or one level or another level, and it constantly happens. And so we all, I think everybody in this room needs some kind of support system. Some of you are great at having that. Some of you have great family members who love you unconditionally and friends who love you unconditionally. I have lost friends, I have lost family members, blood family members, on both sides for a very long time. I lost co-workers, people that I don't know what to have on the streets as an opinion. You know, our legislators have an opinion about how I use a freaking restaurant. That's ridiculous. So it's so important that you have a support system. And that's really important to making sure that your heart, mind, and body is aligned, and that your health and well-being is beautiful, and you can do what you need to do to move ahead and help the next person. Because as I said before, y'all are the future leaders of Georgia. You really are. Also, so I want to talk about how to move forward. Things that you can do to change kind of the narrative of living your lives. Now, I'm going to ask people to say, who's a member of the community, who's an ally, because the fact that you came here says that you are allies. But what you can do to move forward is always just talking, bringing the issue in your families at dinner tables. You mean your blood family, when you have Thanksgiving dinner or Sunday dinner or when you with your families. At work, when you're in the break or when you're talking to somebody, you can sit there and talk to them and just bring up that, hey, this trans person is this, or I gave you some historical facts today. Bring that up. And let's see what the response would be. Let's see how they feel knowing that there was a trans woman that was on city council. I imagine the conversation probably will go for quite a while because that's something that most people don't know. And it's like, what? Really? Also, about like me, the House, representatives, or maybe that story, or something, maybe more radical. What if one went for mayor or president? How do you think? And just those little things. And not to say you're not looking for them to say they would vote for that person, but it sparks the conversation that trans people have the same value that you do. That's the point of this. because the narrative changed. So 10 years ago, if you would have asked a person about same-sex marriage, they said, ugh, no. Gay people just like to have sex and decorate.
We do.
Right, that's what they thought. So, what we have to do is change those shared values and show that gay people are relationships for 15, 20 years. They do have children. They have bought homes. And when the cisgender heterosexuals saw that, oh, well, they like what we like. They're part of the home associations. They have children. Yeah, they've been together how long? Well, they're like us. And so then the popularity or the approval rate of same-sex marriage grows because it's about shared values. They recognize that it's not much difference. So, and that's the same thing that I'm trying to do, is to show you that it's not much difference. You know, I don't know if many of you that know about the Southern Comfort Conference. Okay, well, you know everything, girl. Yeah, so in Atlanta, so this was, 2015 was a very sure that Atlanta already had it. But let me go back a little more. So more depth if you want to. There was a documentary that came out, I want to say in the early 90s, called, sorry! That was my alarm and I was talking too long. Sorry. But back in the early 90s, there was a documentary that came out called Southern Comfort. Okay, documentary, not boobs. So if you Google the boobs come up first, he's scrolling. So the documentary that was about a trans man who lived in South Korea by the name of Robert Eads. Robert Eads had ovarian cancer. There was not a doctor in South Georgia that would service him. So we had to get somebody in a car to drive him up to Atlanta to be able to see a doctor. Okay. I'll tell you at the end of the documentary, because it's solo, he dies. Okay. But out of that comes what's called the Southern Comfort Conference. And what this was originally was about a conference for the trans community to have healthcare access. And then from that, it grew into like today with the seminars, and you can meet people from all over the country, and even, just a way for the trans community to get together and see other trans people. Because, like, when I go down to Augusta or Columbus or Valdosta, there are some trans people down there who are afraid to leave their house. They won't go to the mall because they're afraid of the action that they get, or because of how they're treated. So having a conference where they got together was extremely important to some of them. And many of them brought their wives because their wives knew about it. And so that's another there to what to talk about is that most people just assume that, hey, I'm a black trans woman, so I was like, man, that's true. Okay. But no, it was good. A really good friend of mine, a trans woman is married to a cisgender woman. And that's why I called it actually the Southern Comfort Conference. So it used to be in Atlanta. Last year was his first year in Florida. It's going to be there for the next couple of years. But that's the purpose we talk about that is that trying to change the narrative that people only assume that all of us, again, are in entertainment. But if you go to the conference, it would be probably like 5 times bigger than this from across the country. So you see a number greater than what you really thought we existed. 2, our work experience and our professions are way broad. I mean, there's lawyers there, doctors there, and everything in between. Elected officials, it's very vast there. They have children and homes, and they're married, and so it's not what the image has always been. And so that's the reason why people like Laverne Cox and Janet Mock and Chaz Bono and, yes, even Caitlyn Jenner is important because it shows a different image of what the trans community has been about. And so that's something that I've really tried to feel myself also when talking and being visible and present is, to let people know that changing their mindset and their hearts about how they feel about the trans community. So I think that's my time, but I did leave time for any questions you might want to ask me. Any questions? No questions? What?
Y'all so
Hey,
shy.
yeah, very much,
Hey, I'm Harris Mason, and I'm in law school, and I just wanted to know, I'm also a trans man, the only trans man in the law school, but I just wanted to know more about your work in Georgia Equality, and, are you really recruiting trans candidates, or are you, I'm just curious about your Georgia Equality work.
Okay, so Georgia Equality actually is, there's a C3 side and a C4 side. I do not work on the C4 side. So the C4 side is when we talk about candidacy and endorsements. So if you get or see anything about Georgia Equality endorsing somebody, I have absolutely nothing to do with that. I'm not, okay? So don't be mad at me. It's not the candidate you want. What happens with that is Georgia Equality sends out a form to all the candidates. They then fill it out, send it back, and then our executive director, Jeff Graham, and then the C4's board, nomination committee, they decide on who they endorse. So I have nothing to do with that. But the other part of your question was about Georgia Equality. So I'm trying to do several things. And one of them is in relation kind of to that. And so part of my job is to write policy and legislation in regards to like universities, business, colleges, businesses, and municipalities. So I already have an agreement, I think I can say this publicly right now, is that I know that, what I'll say is there's a city in DeKalb County that has agreed to take on all-inclusive non-discrimination legislation there, okay? I'm also working with 2 other counties to try to get that in there. Because, when I'm talking about, it's great to pick in and to fire and to protest, but if there's a law on the books that will protect a class of people, which should be all people, that to me is what's most important. That I'm not going to be pulled out of arrest her. That I want an officer waiting for me out there because I've experienced this before. So that's one of the major things that I do with Georgia Equality. Of course, the other things is I do work with GSAs also, speaking, I do trans competency. An interesting little side thing that I do is, so part of me being with the Atlanta Human Relations Commission and now the chair, so this mayor city attorney created this program because we have a huge issue in Atlanta with homelessness, and the trans community has always been rejected into homeless shelters. So for the city of Atlanta, that's illegal. And now HUD did what's called equal access rule. So they also have stated that if you receive HUD funding, you cannot deny a trans person into a homeless shelter, okay? And so what I do now is I go into the homeless shelters and give them a competency training. Telling them how to implement their shelters to have access to the trans community. So that's something that I'm actually doing my next one on